It was sent from your version of the afterlife to here with love. This is brown butter.
Now, to make the brown butter, I've picked a method that is fairly unorthodox. But what it's going to do is allow us to slow down the process so we can see just how everything is happening in real time. After all, this is kinetic energy, heat, and time. It looks like heat, but it's more than that. Check this out. This is Kenny. He's a magnetic hot plate stirrer, and Kenny, I want you to meet butter. New Zealand butter. So Kenny works essentially by having this hot plate here. This hot plate gets up to around 100 degrees, but it can go hotter. Kenny's a good boy. Now underneath, there's a magnet. Now that magnet helps stir one of these. This is a Teflon coated stir bar. So essentially, you put it into a beaker and get it nice and centered, and then just turn on the stirring option. And it stirs everything for you. I love this bit of equipment. So the first thing we do is turn on the heat on Kenny, and then the next thing we do is put in the butter. And then we wait. So we're about halfway done. As you can see here, the milk solids are already starting to separate from the fat. Now this stuff here is the stuff that is going to be caramelizing when I increase the heat. So once this is done melting, I'll put in the stir bar and we'll get stirring. And then I'll explain a little bit more once we get to that point. So in goes the stir bar. And we're away. Now as you can see, the milk solids are now mixing back into the rest of the fat. I choose this method for a couple of reasons. The first reason is we can see the change in color and really monitor just how caramelized the milk solids get when they have the Maillard reaction. It keeps it nice and consistent with the particle size of the milk solids caramelizing. I found with doing this in a frying pan, you often end up with quite a bit of clumpage. This avoids it, not completely, but it does make it very, very easy to control. And the final reason is that it looks really cool. So now we're at that. What will start to happen now is we'll see a situation where the water content of the butter starts to evaporate. Now the water actually keeps the temperature down slightly, so we'll only really start to see caramelization once that water has evaporated. And then once that happens, it moves fairly quickly. Okay, this is something I've never seen happen before. I think it's because I've had it on very, very hot to sort of speed up the process, but if someone poured me one of those at the pub, I'd be pretty pissed off.
The bubbles died down as the steam left, and we quickly surged past 100 degrees Celsius to the caramelization temperature.
So it's smelling really nutty in here now, and the head on that beer is just sort of like lowered down. It got right to the brink, but we're getting close. The color is definitely not yellow anymore. We're looking very much like brown. So basically when it starts smelling really caramelly, I can't show you that, but it'll get to around, or depending on the color of your butter when you start, you'll start getting to around about this color. And the smell will smell nutty, sort of caramelly and fatty, and it's just amazing. So basically around about this point, when you can smell it, you want to start turning the heat down a little bit. Or maybe looking at that all the way off. And another thing we've got to take note of is we've got to keep on stirring. So as this butter cools down and starts to solidify, we want to keep the particulate suspended in the fat. And I mean the milk solid suspended in the fat. That way we make sure we get a nice even flavor without the milk separating from the fat.
So while the butter's stirring, as it dips back below 100 degrees Celsius, I add a little bit of water to the mix to bring the water content back up to what the butter was before we started melting it. And then once it hits around 15 degrees Celsius, this.
And now for the next round. This one should be interesting.
So now we're going to do something to this that's a little bit interesting. Yep, milk. If it's the milk solids that are caramelizing when I do this, then why not just add more milk? Evaporate the water and I assume make it more burnt brown butter. So basically, this fat layer here should slowly integrate with the milk. We'll see how this goes though. I've never done this before.
So this is just pure speculation at this point, but what I'm thinking is that the more milk solids I put in, the more caramelization I get, or the more caramelized parts I get, which means a more intense brown butter. Now, the purpose of this would be to use it in something where it's going to be diluted. So, baking, brown butter biscuits. It'll all come down to the taste test.
It is thick, like it is really, really thick. And it's only at 99.7 degrees Celsius. I can't seem to get this high enough. But then, almost as if it was listening to me, the temperature began to climb up to the marked 129 degrees Celsius where things started to caramelize last time. And to be honest, the magnetic stirrer was having a bit of trouble with it. It was quite thick, but it began to darken and it began to look fantastic until it turned into this. Absolutely beautiful. So I've got my two butters. This one is the standard butter. It's very umami. The caramelly flavor is very much there, but the salt really offsets it, and it's got this nuttiness, which I suppose is an apt descriptor of nuts. I would use this in spreads and dressings, things like pasta. Now this one is the one with the added milk. So we'll give a little sample. Yeah, that's sweeter. It's much richer. The salt is definitely not as present there, so I think the sweetness is sort of like pushed on a little bit further. This one would go well in cookies and stuff like that. I think it would do well as a sort of a sweeter use case. Now obviously not everyone's got access to a kenny like I do, but you can do it in a frying pan or a pot. I just recommend doing it in something that is stainless steel, not non-stick, because you can't see the color change with the dark surface. The other thing I would take from this process is, as it's solidifying, blend it. The milk solids are going to want to clump together when you start to caramelize them, and once they stick you end up with lumps all the way through it. I recommend just giving it a blend, smoothing it out, and then keep it relatively stirred as you do the cooling process, and then it'll solidify with a nice even caramelly flavor and a very even beautiful texture. So yeah, give brown butter a go. It's butter elevated.